master raised the boy as his own child and marveled as the youngster grew and became uncommonly strong. Now the boy, known as Goku, is on his own and has become the sole guardian of his grandfather's most mystical possession, his Dragon Ball.
Welcome back, everyone, to Get the Mic. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brok.
And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about a new spirit of the Red Ribbon Army that Goku will encounter. First of all, this is a live stream for Tuesdays. We normally do them Tuesdays. At this point, it's possible we'll continue doing it that way. But yes. Aside from that, we are gonna try and upload more pre-recorded stuff eventually. It's just trying to match up times right now.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I think we can go ahead and get started, eh?
Mm-hmm.
So, we first get a little recap of what's happened thus far with Goku being up here in the northern villages. He gets saved by Sinnoh. He crashes, right? And he has to challenge General White. Now, a general is higher than a colonel, obviously, and the last thing we saw Goku fight was Colonel Silver. And so it's implied that on the hierarchy of the Red Ribbon Army that General White is higher than Colonel Silver, and we'll see why. I think it's it's very compelling. This episode establishes General White as instantly more threatening than anything Colonel Silver represented.
Oh, definitely. It's introduced right at the beginning of this episode what the sort of tone of the threat is.
Yes. And so we just see this little flashback, Goku receiving his clothing from Sano,
Hmm.
who is and her and her mother are combined, that feminine spirit, which Mother Nature itself benefiting the hero along his journey, clothing him and protecting him literally against his challenges, this being the cold.
Yeah, and I like the way that it sort of it the way it splits the two buildings of this little arc, right? Where you've got the pink domed maternal sort of symbolic space, and then you've got the tower.
The
Like,
angular, hierarchical structure versus the,
hmm
what do I want to say? Almost template houses you have for the village that are all circular, right? All the
hmm
same size as well. There's nothing hierarchical about them, let's say. So, and we also get to see General White here saying, I don't care if you have to kill him, take his Dragon Ball, right? And that's something that we kind of can see starting off, that's something Colonel Silver didn't necessarily tell his crew. I mean, they encountered Goku multiple times without them just opening fire.
right.
And so we already see a level of teeth to this adversarial spirit that was missing from the last one.
hmm
And it's almost, we're starting to get the message, and it'll be hammered home more and more as we continue,
Yeah, that's
that
pretty much the theme of this season
that the
of
Red
the
Ribbon
of
Army,
the
right,
show. Yeah.
is about that. How let's say, how far down in a hellish spirit can a person adopt?
hmm
And so we will see that. Now, I think the last thing we see is the titles, which is the Terror of Muscle Tower. And we named this episode the Terror of Muscle Tower. We kind of go back and forth between the Japanese and the English, depending on what we perceive as more spiritually aligned towards the episode.
hmm
Just saying that outright. I think the Terror of Muscle Tower is specifically talking about Major Metallitron, because there's a reason, and we'll get into it
Yeah.
when we get there. Anything else we got here?
Nope.
So then we do see Goku enter into Muscle Tower. He's invited in by General White, who challenges him to try to reach to the top of the tower. He asks what Goku's doing here, and Goku says he's looking for Villager Chief San, which is, it's just funny to me that he thinks his name is literally Village Chief.
Yeah, it's a joke that doesn't carry over across the translations.
No, definitely not.
Are we shuffled?
We should be shuffled. Let's check.
Just want to catch it real quick.
Maybe, but I mean, I just did it, so should be now. If it wasn't before, what was I saying?
We were just talking about how the joke doesn't really translate
Oh,
across. That his
Villager
name
Chief
is,
San. That's
I'm
right.
looking for Village Chief. Like, if they played it in English, it's pretty much like, I'm looking for Mr. Chief.
Yes.
You know, giving it that
yeah.
san, giving it that like title that it's a name.
Yes, and so he tells White he's doing that, and White interprets it. Obviously, he's not really joking around with Goku. He's like, "Oh, you're looking for the chief.
Mm-hmm.
Let me challenge you to this hierarchical contest of the tower, Muscle Tower."
It's
right?
like, yeah, let's see if you can come and get him then.
And we've talked about how it's an edifice to thuggery, right? It's that which rules by muscle and despotism,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, and
Well, and that's why it's structured like a tower with like individual fight rooms, right? And why he doesn't just get bombarded and it's like a sequential fight. There's really interesting reasonings behind this happening in Dragon Ball, and it's not just a formulaic like, okay, here's a fight sequence. It's like the whole structure of Muscle Tower is to represent that there's a a fairness to the fights. It's like if you can overpower this level, if you can overpower this guy, then you deserve to fight this guy. They're not really fighting dirty in that sense, right? They're not teaming up on Goku. They're not like just immediately just trying to kill him. It's a contest to them too. They're respecting the nature of
And
power.
it's because they are, or let's say General White has the adversarial spirit, which respects hierarchy.
And that's why he would
And
be
Colonel Silver,
general.
for example, didn't have as much of that. He belittled the hierarchy of boxers, for example, right?
Mhm.
We got to see a little bit of his character there. And so yeah, it is exactly that. And so we see Goku first run into a bunch of thugs who he dispatches pretty easily, but they think that they're gonna be able to crush him. It's like taking candy from a baby, right? They immediately underestimate Goku, and as we can see, the lower level thugs of this shrine of thuggery are
Mhm.
no match for Goku's spirit.
Right, and they're represented by sort of like a group of like low level street thugs, kind of like what you would see if you walked into a hideout, right? Which is kind of strange to see in Muscle Tower, where it's like a military
But that's
installation.
exactly
But
why,
that's why that's there, right?
because it is what it represents.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, uh, I think they ask White if they can kill Goku, and White's like, "Sure, do whatever you
You're like,
want."
yeah, kill him. Cool.
And so it kind of starts happening. Um,
Yeah, and that's why I was saying that earlier too. That he just announces it right at the beginning of the episode what the stakes are. It's just like, yeah, just kill him, just whatever it takes.
whatever.
Immediately,
Yeah,
like the
there's no,
coldest, most rational, just get whatever we want. Use any means of power necessary.
and it's very aligned with the ice theme as well. I think
Hmm.
in that way, right? Cold and calculating, right? Heartless in a way.
Right.
And yeah, and so we get to see the first iteration of it is just these basic thugs. But then the next thing we see is something Goku has not encountered before. The next thing we see is Major Metallic,
Major Metallitron, the Terror.
the Terror of Muscle Tower. And the Terror of Muscle Tower, I want to say, do you want to go first with the analysis?
Um,
Cuz I was going to go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm curious.
So
to
the
hear.
Terror of Muscle Tower is that this mode of being Major Metallitron, who is that he even is a visual, and in the English dub he makes a reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's
Mhm.
he's kind of not the epitome, but he is let's say a paragon of masculinity in the physical form.
Yeah, he's the archetype of being bigger than you.
Right. And so, and he wears glasses as well, right? Intentionally blinded.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And we get to learn more about him later. I won't get into his innards yet. We'll get into that. But so far we see the spirit that is kind of this masculine force, right? That's been corrupted and perverted by the thuggery that General White represents to enforce the despotism across the land.
Right. If you're enforcing it that way, what rises to the top of the hierarchy, right?
Well, also, we know that other villagers have come and fought Major Metallic.
Chrysombra. The androids have arrived.
Yes,
Yes.
that's why actually what I mentioned in the description, Chris Sombra, is
Great.
that this is the first of those spirits that we get to see.
Totally forgot that this is the original,
Yeah.
instantiation of it.
Well, actually, this is right the only real android. Only real android. There are other ones are cyborgs, but
Yeah.
yeah,
The cyborg
yeah.
saga.
But yes, exactly. In that spirit that General White can command to enforce his rule
Mm-hmm.
is the terror of Muscle Tower. It's a rule by fear, right? The villagers have tried to go infiltrate Muscle Tower before. They've gotten past the first floor even. We know that canonically. But they've never been able to get past this because it's not something that can be defeated just through brute strength, sheer force. Nothing like that is going to be able to stop Major Metallic. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can't be stronger than strongest.
Yeah.
Right. You can't beat strong with strong.
And so I'm curious, do you have anything to add there?
to the terror aspect of him.
Yeah.
Well, I like one thing that stood out to me about this is that not only is he sort of like he's the Terminator, right? He's shown as that Schwarzenegger Terminator um archetypal sort of picture, but also to Goku, it reads to me as almost like a child fighting an adult. You know, that he's so much bigger and so much stronger and can deal a different type of damage to what he expects Goku to be. And that delineation there, it always just kind of makes me think of what would it be like for a kid to fight an adult? That's basically what they're representing.
And
with
he's so
him.
much more ideologically possessed, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Metallic, that is. Metallitron. I keep calling him metallic.
But that fear, right? And that's why the first thing that he really does to him is he tries to just crush him with his hands, right?
Right. My spirit, the spirit of strength, will overwhelm you. And this is to show, too, that Goku's spirit is more than just strength and getting stronger, right? And we'll see, especially in how he defeats Major Metallic, but we'll get into that in just a minute.
And they really superimpose the fear there, where it's like multiple times throughout the fight he stands up and he's towering over Goku, he's looming over him. We get these really low angle shots of him just to emphasize, like,
and Goku's genuinely surprised
this is
as well
intimidating.
multiple times. Yes, that it is an intimidating, and it is to go up against the manifestation of physical strength.
Yeah, that's to say it's very difficult, and it can be very scary to come up against your physical limitations in that way too, because this is to say, like, pushing Goku to a certain type of physical limit to overcome this challenge, right? Metaphorically, at least.
And it's no coincidence that the Red Ribbon Army is using androids. Just to mention on that it's the spirit of an android, an automaton that can be controlled, whose force is whose very being is tied into the will of another, right?
Yeah, you could say that their identity is assigned to the will of somebody else.
Right. And so let's go ahead and continue with the fight. So, Goku, and I think actually there's there's another point I want to mention specifically. So the beginning of the fight, Major Metallitron goes for a punch, I believe, and Goku jumps above him, right? And hangs on a chain and then jumps down and gets him, like, after.
Right, he lands, like, on his shoulder and punches him in the face.
Yes. And I wanted to mention that because it is to say that Goku's mobility, his ability to adapt, is already manifest here, such that it's above just the pure physical. And we see that alone is not going to be able to stop Goku, let's say.
Yeah, we establish right away that Goku's mode of being is
physically above.
Not
and
just
also
physically above, but spiritually above.
Right, that's what I mean.
But yeah.
And so let's go ahead and continue with the fight. So Goku does break out of this grapple, and he announces it's his turn next. He kicks Major Metallitron into the corner, much to the surprise of General White and Ninja Murasaki. We haven't really talked about Murasaki yet, but don't worry, we'll have a whole episode on Murasaki. He is watching along. He's kind of playing as the foolish adversary to General White's adversarial spirit, and that's actually supremely manifest in the next episode. So, just to mention it, we'll get there though. But I just wanted to mention him since he's definitely in this set of clips. So they're surprised, and Major Metallitron gets back up after the kick. He is relatively unfazed by the damage that Goku is dealing out.
Yeah, Goku's very surprised by him getting back up. It's almost like prideful of how Goku reacts to it, because he immediately assumes he's won the fight, turns around and starts strolling away. He's just like, I'm over this fight.
It's like the third time he's done it too.
Yeah. And he's just not. And it's funny thinking about it now, because his reaction to the fight is part of his progression in overcoming this fight, right? Because he doesn't respect his own victory or what he has done, right? The first time that he does it.
He hasn't also realized really what it takes to extinguish the spirit of strength, right? And I think in the next set of clips is where we're going to see what exactly that entails, I believe. Okay, so yeah, here's where he's amazing. He took the brunt of my attacks and didn't flinch.
Yeah, he's it kind of ties into what I was saying, right? Where it's like a child could be very surprised that they could run up and hit an adult with all of their strength and be like, "Oh, it didn't even flinch him." It's like so outside of the realm of what they could do, right? It's really pitting the childlike innocence of Goku against this cold, heartless, rational force of strength that he has to grapple with, right?
Literally, yes. And obviously symbolically. So then he Major Metallitron is actually kind of getting the best of Goku here, uses a mouth beam, knocks him down, right? He's doing some damage to Goku for sure, and Goku lands a headbutt, but it actually hurts him because Major Metallitron is actually an android.
What a hard
Oh,
face, right?
yeah, what a hard face. And I think that's true. What a let's say indomitable spirit, right?
Hmm.
It's to say that what a mature form that this is.
Not only that, but it's like what a stark image of what masculinity can be. He's like, what a hard face. It's like to look at someone's face is hard is like their persona, like their sort of and this is all persona, right? The sunglasses, he's like Schwarzenegger esque. He's like, what a hard face. He's trying to attack um what he represents and prove that he's more worthy of ascending this hierarchy. And it's like just the mere image of him is and the persona that he's embodying is already not indomitable, but it appears to be, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so what a hard face, exactly. And so this is kind of the bout that Goku has, the last physical bout Goku has with him before kind of coming up with a different plan. Ah, I see what you're saying. A beam coming from the mouth. It is a more primitive form. I would agree with that. It's and it's not so much speaking the truth because it doesn't create order from chaos. That's actually excellent comment though, Chris.
Yeah,
Sombra.
my interpretation of the beam too is sort of like there's two.
The comma.
You think of it's a missile that comes out of his mouth and it tracks Goku, right? Goku can't dodge it. He dodges once and then twice and then it hits him anyway. And I think it metaphorically to me it kind of reminds me of that sort of like an adult yelling at a kid. Like he can speak so much malice that even if it's not necessarily as true as what Goku understands to be reality, still that sort of malicious spirit that he can bring out, right? That he can speak is something that is kind of like a universal thing that strikes fear into a kid, right?
Hmm.
Like really, like an adult can tear into a kid in a way that just. And I know that that's not as much of a symbolic thing, but I think that tying that breath and spirit into the idea of it that what he can create with his words, right? It still hits Goku, and he thinks that he's beaten Goku by it's. I would call it
Well,
like vicious mockery
see,
almost,
I
right?
don't, I don't. It's not as much. I wouldn't say it's as much words because it's more of not even an unintelligible argument. It's more like an unintelligible anything. There's no words there. It's just a
Hmm.
manifestation of his spirit, right?
Yeah.
And the spirit of Metallitron is one that Goku has to contend with, which is why I would say it tracks him. I'm I'm very interested to hear more of the parent child analysis on this because that was interesting. I didn't quite get that when I saw it.
Well, you think about sort of because he calls it a kamehameha. And Goku refers to it that way. Like that's how he interpreted it was that he did a kamehameha from his mouth. Um, and so Goku says, "Well, then I have a Kamehameha blast that I'll use at you." And Goku's speech, like what he creates out of his spirit, because thinking about speech in that more symbolic way, what he creates is more true, right? And so what Metallitron can create as this bigger, representing that almost like adulthood, right? That uh lack of innocence, that cold heartedness can speak destructively, can just be absolutely a force of tearing somebody down or of just destruction, right? And regardless if it's the truth, regardless of what's said, that coming from him in the way that he would, being heartless, use his speech or his spirit, um, Goku has to reconcile that, right? He has to come back at that with truth, right? And to say that he has a better understanding of, I don't want to say speech, but he has more of a,
This is okay. Keep going. Keep going.
it's almost like from the mouth of babes, right? Like he has a more pure truth that he understands, which
Because
is which supersedes the the nature of the authority coming from a figure like the face that he's coming up against, right? The truth that he knows is greater than just that destructive authoritative thing that can be spoken to him, right?
see, that's the thing. I'm not so sure that it's authoritative. I don't know if it's like a parental or even
Well,
adult.
I guess authoritative is kind of a bad way to put it,
Well,
but
I'm not trying to. I want
coming
to.
from the larger thing that strikes fear and
So what I was getting from this is exactly this. My well, let's say Goku's interaction first with Metallitron physically, right,
hmm
is that he's not going to be able to physically overpower the spiritual manifestation of strength.
right.
So then we see Metallitron use that spirit, right, to and it is a primitive beam attack, but what beam attacks represent, right, are that manifestation of spirit. But
hmm
even this is like simply a manifestation of malice from the spirit that is overcome by the ideology of the Red Ribbon Army, blind to all else but strength, and can manifest its strength in a beam that Goku has to contend with, meaning Goku has to acknowledge that people who are ideologically possessed and have strength can be this threatening. He has to address
hmm
that spirit exists in the world, that thuggery, and this is like the pinnacle of thuggery, exists in the world. And so he has to contend with it, which is why it follows him. Then, when he does contend with it, his true nature is revealed. His real spirit, which is that of an automaton controlled by another's will, is revealed
mm,
in the Kamehameha wave.
right, yeah.
That was my interpretation of it. That's why I was like, wow, this is
So
totally
yeah, that
analysis
that
I
was
haven't
my
done.
psychoanalysis skew on it, right? But
Okay,
but I
yeah.
think that symbolically it kind of, because I'm speaking more to imagery, right? I'm kind of trying to make a more symbolic analysis, which I think that it holds, and I think that your analysis strengthens that way of looking at it too, because what symbolically then Metallitron will be doing is manipulating that position and that status with his face, right? The persona that he's got here, he's sort of like manipulating that as leverage, as something that's uh you could say that he's using his position as muscle as such to bully someone from his position, right? Bully, I guess, is kind of a soft way of saying it, but he's, if you want to connect the mouth beam to spirit, it's like just having this power behind you to say this vicious, doesn't have to be true, whatever it is, to tear down somebody with your
Well, let's be
and
specific.
channel that spirit of
What
malice, right?
exactly is Metallitron saying with the blast? What is that spirit manifest? And it is, well, in my opinion, I would like to
hmm
hear if you agree. It is the idea that physicality alone will not protect a person from being ideologically possessed.
What he's speaking is that.
Sorry, that's what Goku learns after confronting truth with it.
hmm
What he's speaking is that this is the pinnacle,
Yeah,
and this
what
is
he's
all
saying
you
is
can
that
achieve.
everything is ultimately is predominated upon power, right?
Yes.
Or predicated upon power, I should say.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
and that this is the way of the world, right?
Sorry, I got ahead of myself there.
I follow though. Yeah, it's basically that. And then Goku's truth, right, that he brings back is that there is a higher mode of being than power, and just the way that I am here at all right now is is indicative of that, right?
And it's amazing too how Goku deals with it because he uses the Kamehameha wave. It blasts away the hard face,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unable to articulate himself in the world. Metallitron is not dead because his will is not what maintains him in the first place.
Yeah.
The fanaticism of an ideologically possessed person will be such that even after that person is unable to articulate themselves into the world, they're still able to parrot and support the ideology that they once
Well, what's a
could
martyr?
decide. Right. And so, but Goku destroying the hard face
Mm-hmm.
and the truth of it, realizing, and let's say the order created out of the chaos used, or the chaos of this spirit, is that Goku realizes that that is the sacrifice. For the pinnacle of strength at this point, the sacrifice that's been made is his own will. Metallitron's, that is.
Exactly. It is giving up choice, giving up the ability to actually speak truth, like like having a truth to speak, even, right?
Exactly. Because Metallitron has no truth to speak. So also here we do see the fist right after he destroys the hard face. We see him still able to conduct his spirit of malice by launching his fist across the room and punching Goku.
Mm. That's kind of tied into that martyr
So
idea
even
too,
though,
right? It's
well,
like,
I just want to say, even though Goku has realized what the spirit is, he still hasn't defeated it simply by engaging with it in truth.
right. Well, that's what the next phase of this fight is going to ultimately bring it full circle on, right? And we can kind of come back to that idea of respecting the nature of what he has to contend with.
Yes. And so then what happens is, I think with the next set, I think we need to move on. So also to say that, oh, did we miss that part? I think it's in this set. So Goku uses the power pole at
Yes.
this point, right? I think.
Well, he pulls the power pole out and he's like, all right, fine. And he tries to puncture his heart with it, right? He blasts a hole right through his chest with the power pole. And it doesn't work. He just turns around and continues attacking him. So he is surprised by this because Goku thinks that attacking at, how do I say, attacking at the heart of him, right? That he has at least some human nature that he can sort of, and using the power pole as well. It's like common humanity. It's like trying to appeal to the last humanity left in Metallitron symbolically, and then seeing there is none.
There's exactly. It's all gone. It's been all 100% replaced with ideology.
So destroying his heart with the power pole won't do it.
Destroying his fist with the power pole.
It do it.
Metallitron's fist. When this is to say too, I want to mention that the pure physical manifestation corrupted by ideology, that spirit is nothing compared to the ancestral, which is represented in the Noivo.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so he destroys as they clash. Metallitron's fist is destroyed, and so he's fistless now.
Right. Well, I like the way that he defeats him. He stops the punch.
Yes.
Right. He stops the arc of the punch mid punch by essentially saying like, okay, this is your limit. Like you can't punch further than this, and just uses as a wedge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that in and of itself just destroys the fist. So it's not like he chops the fist off. He doesn't like hit it with a punch or a swing and blow it up. When the punch is stopped by the Noibo, it self-destructs. It explodes.
Right, and that is to say, when malice is pitted against the ancestral wisdom, right, that malice is extinguished pretty quickly.
Which I love the stoic implication of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like you can rely on almost like the logos, right? The logos of truth and of the truth of your ancestors and the image that's been passed down through your patriarchal lineage, right? To stand up against any level of strength that would come at you, you know.
And this,
and
yeah,
on its face as a real truth, um, it doesn't compare. And it becomes self-evident that it doesn't compare. That's why it destroys itself, right? It reveals itself
yes,
as
yes,
it
it
tries.
does become self-evident. I see what you're saying. And so then there's nothing left for Metallitron to attack with but the stomp.
The stomp of a
He
boot.
stomps on Goku there and flattens him. That's to say, it's an attack meant to level one's spirit, raise them low to the ground, right? To reduce them to nothing. But obviously, it's
Well,
not going to work on Goku
well, I love the Orwell quote. I think of that whenever I see this, and he says, "If you want to know what the future looks like, imagine a boot stomping upon a human face forever."
forever. Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's that.
And so that's exactly the last thing, the last ideological weapon that Metallitron has against Goku.
Hmm.
He's done with malice, right? He's already iterated his spirit and failed to defeat Goku in that way. So the last thing he has is this um what do I even want to say? Tyrannical.
He's just trying to crush him. I mean, it's how he started the fight. He
The
tried to crush
breaking
him.
of the spirit,
Yeah.
right? It's the last thing, yeah. And so he kicks Goku away, and Goku gets.
Well, I want to say
Well,
before we go forward, maybe this is a good way of putting it. He starts the fight by trying to crush him physically.
yes,
Doesn't work, and he loses his arms, and now he wants to crush him spiritually.
it's the only thing he has left.
And that's the leveling that you're talking about, right?
Yes, exactly. And so he kicks Goku away, and Goku's kind of uh he's admitting at this point, he's like, I'm winded, I'm pretty hurt. This fanaticism that he's never encountered before. Because think about how the enemies in the past, think about Monster Beast Giran.
Yeah.
There was no fanaticism in Monster Beast Giran. Once his bullying spirit was exposed to not be easily able to overcome Goku,
Yeah,
he
he
surrendered.
just waved the flag.
He surrendered.
Yeah.
And Roshi was not an adversarial spirit. There was gusto there, but it wasn't fanaticism like this. This is beyond oneself, beyond one's individual self is the instantiation of this ideological possession which can turn a person into a zealot.
And I think a lot of people can recognize that whenever you see people who are ideologically possessed argue and debate, because it is just an onslaught of this
And they will
pre-programmed,
self-destruct parts of themselves.
self-destructive.
Yes.
They'll blow up their own arguments.
Yeah. Exactly
They'll
that.
appeal to authority in the same ways. All of that shit.
And so that's what's manifest here. Or at least that's my analysis, I'll say. And so the last thing we see is Goku get back up, and he's upset. And so here comes Major Metallic to continue fighting. And then he doesn't.
Well, Goku winds up one final. He's like, I'm really going to do it now. I'm going to end this fight. And he winds up his last Kamehameha. And before he can finish the attack, Metallitron fails.
He runs out of batteries, is what they say.
Hmm.
What do you think that could insinuate?
He runs out of batteries. I mean, I would attribute that the idea has ran its course. He has burnt out.
Well, and I think I agree, and to articulate it further, I think it's that there's nothing left. Oh, there's something that happens before that. Goku dives through him, and I think this is actually
right.
important to mention. So the last thing Goku does, his last effort, he's just gonna dive through and penetrate this spirit, proving that his spirit is not gonna be torn to shreds by it, let's say. And so he dives through, and on the other side, Metallitron stops for a second, then keeps walking towards him, and then that's when he charges up the Kamehameha wave, and he runs out of batteries. And I think the running out of batteries is to say that there's nothing more, no more spiritual attacks that Metallitron has at his disposal will be able to harm Goku at that point. So there's no point in continuing the fight.
Well, Goku knows him inside and out now.
Yes.
And that's sort of the thing that you can see in those arguments, like I had said, where if you can predict what somebody's going to say and you give them their arguments before they can say them, they're done.
They run out of batteries.
They're not. All of a sudden, they don't get to keep checking those little boxes in their little wins, right?
How this spirit contends with Goku is no longer in contention. He's lost all his teeth. We saw the teeth in the beginning and they were sharp, but Goku has de-toothed this man.
Yeah. There are no more hidden attacks. He can't surprise him anymore with his toughness.
He can't crush him. The only thing he has left is his zealotry, which at this point Goku is not surprised by, but just pissed off by.
He has no face. He has no way to articulate it. He has nothing to lean on anymore.
And so he runs out and Goku proceeds to the next floor. And I think that brings us neatly to the end of this episode. Any final thoughts we have for the terror of Muscle Tower? And this is also to say, I think I'll mention that Goku defeating the terror of Muscle Tower solidifies him to the village as a hero already instantiated. He's removed that terror thus far of this floor. No one knows what the next floor is, so they're not really as scared of it, but this one no one's come back from. So breaking that barrier removes the first level of fear from the population. And we're going to see, too, how the population of the village will either help or hinder Goku later. But
well, yeah, breaking the fear also symbolically here where we have, like we had pointed out, there's this sort of femininity in an island of snow, and then you've got this masculinity in an island in the middle of snow, right? And what Goku's ultimately doing here is he's putting the masculine and the feminine right. He's putting them in the places that they should be so that there can be equilibrium, right? And so they're living in terror. And so one thing that he's broken down now by the end of this episode is that terror, and he's sort of setting it back. This, the masculinity has become tyrannical, the femininity can't challenge anything, and it's just placating now. So it's really about bridging that gap, I feel like.
Yeah, and especially since Goku came here bearing boons from the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, it is almost carrying their standard, and we actually get to see a flashback of them there. But Murasaki goes on to the next floor to be ready for Goku. I think that's a good spot to end it. Murasaki we will get into next time, probably on Sunday.
I'm excited.
I am also excited. All right, well, this has been a good episode. If you liked what you heard, please give us a like. Join us on Rumble. We're starting to upload on Rumble a couple days a week. If you want to rumble us on there. Brok doesn't know what a rumble is. But
just rumble me.
Rumble us. Also subscribe on Rumble. Get on the Discord if you haven't. All that good stuff. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, we should get some Rumble on our socials up here on the screen too to remind.
Yeah, we will. Well, I think if that's it,
yeah.
I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brok.
Good night, everyone.
I told you I wasn't going to go easy on you. You're on your own.
You can't leave me. That's cruel.
Hey, guess what? Sometimes, kid, life is cruel. And don't you forget it. The courage to survive on your own, you'll be a stronger fighter, both in body and in mind.